You're listening to Innovation for Alpha, where we explore everything at the intersection of healthcare innovation and finance. Through our discussions and interviews, we keep you informed and educated about healthcare innovations, next-level venture investing, and everything involving the combination of the two.
Hi, everybody. This is Tobin Arthur with another episode of Innovation for Alpha, and I am really excited to have Chelsea Larson joining me today from Oklahoma City, as I've told her, one of my favorite cities in the United States. And she's working on a very cool technology that she's going to tell us about, and the company is called ParaNano. And she is going to share a little bit about the company, and I think you're going to be excited to learn from her. So Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I've enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know what you're doing with this company. It's a super interesting story, but why don't we start with that? Just give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get to the background of the company.
Sure. So I started my first company 2015 as a post-baccalaureate project. I graduated with my undergrad in 2014. I was approached by an entrepreneurship professor to stay on as a post-baccalaureate thing and go through a business plan competition. And I thought, sounds fun. I love entrepreneurship. And it's a big presentation, which at the time, I was like, that's my forte. So let's do it. And we ended up winning. We went to regionals, and then we went to the tri-state level and won second place at both, which ended up being about $31,000.
Nice.
And so the team that we had built kind of all sat back and looked at each other, and we were like, this isn't such a bad idea. Maybe we should actually start the company. And so we did. So ParaNano Wounds Care, which is what I'm on the show to talk to you today about, is my third company that I've co-founded. And I love being an entrepreneur. So I'm a constant learner. I love talking to people. I love learning about new things, and I love problem solving as well. So it's a great merriment of all of the things that I'm really passionate about.
Well, that's a great background. And we love discovering entrepreneurs that come from different places. As we've talked a little bit about, so many companies come out of the Bostons and the San Franciscos, and nothing wrong with that. But when we find a company, particularly a company doing some really interesting deep tech things that don't come out of those markets, it's fun, because it's like discovering a little, this little nugget. So you've got a lot of the natural characteristics of an entrepreneur, but tell us how this came about, this technology came about, and specifically about how the wound care application of this evolved.
Sure. So back in 2015, my first company, ParaNano, it was actually the first company spun out of my university, the University of Central Oklahoma. UCO, University of Central Oklahoma, has an immense patent portfolio around electrospun nanofiber technology. And they don't have a tech transfer office. And so that was actually the piece that we took to that business plan competition, was a novel way to create nanofiber membranes and control the deposition of the nanofibers to, in a scalable way. Nanofibers can be used for any types of industries. And so we were like, this is a cool thing. But then we really started to realize that since UCO doesn't have a tech transfer office, they have these patents sitting around that no one is able to commercialize. And so, being the entrepreneur that I am, my business partner and I looked at each other and we were like, we love UCO. We're alumni, or my business partner actually works there. He's their patent agent. And we were like, what if we, kind of took all of these patents and put them into the company, and then we started spinning out subsidiaries to go after specific applications. And wound care came about. We attended a conference in 2017 up in Chicago to pitch the idea of, strategic partnerships we have this cool nanofiber deposition technology. We're just looking for ways to apply it. And we were approached by a tech transfer gentleman from the University of Manitoba. And he said, our researchers are working on a wound care product with nanofibers, electrospun nanofibers, and they're having the exact problem that you are claiming that your technology solves. So can we work together? And I immediately said, yes, please, let's work together. And so we got a license agreement in place, spun out ParaNano Wounds Care, and kind of hit the grounds running. We started the company in 2018. And immediately after we incorporated, I started going to all of the wound care conferences I could and reading all of the research papers that I could get my hands on. And boy, is wound care, it is the wild, wild west of medicine. It is a challenging industry for providers and patients, and also innovators as well. And but I've become so passionate about it, and so I'm just so excited to, make progress, and hopefully we will provide a very, very helpful tool to impact everyone who has a wound. So that's kind of the overview of where we came from.
That's great. And let's just give everybody a little bit of taste for what you mean by nanofiber.
Sure.
Obviously, the term kind of gives you some indication, but specifically, what does that mean, and why was that being developed specifically? What was the original thought at the university?
Sure. So actually, one of the named inventors on one of the original patents, Paul Snow, he, as his last hurrah as a senior design engineer major at UCO in his undergrad, he was tasked with increasing the lifespan of total hip replacements. And so he had done some research in nanofibers and thought, what if we could concentrically wrap a nanofiber around a total hip implant that creates surface area, increased surface area, and use that instead of, cement or just the normal press fitting and things like that. So that's kind of where the nanotechnology was born out of, because in the industry, there's no way to concentrically wrap a nanofiber around a hip implant that was commercially available. So he and some team members developed this, and it was amazing. And so that's actually the first product we took to the business plan competition. But then more research was done, and nanofibers have applicability in almost every industry. They're advanced materials. You can use them in filtration, obviously biomedical space, batteries, energy, all of these things. But the industry is not able to commercially produce a well-aligned, structured membrane. So typically nanofibers come out, they come out looking like steel wool, random orientation. You look at them under a microscope and it looks like my hair, it's just curly. And then we have created a way to actually create membranes with a cross alignment pattern. So, in an orthogonal or radially aligned pattern. And we can do that on a commercial scale. So that's kind of where that really exciting piece of the nanofibers comes from. We use electrospinning, which takes a polymer, uses electricity to create a solid strand. And then our proprietary exciting stuff is in how the electricity interacts with that polymer to create that alignment. So really excited about it. We have proven feasibility. We make membranes. It's exciting.
That seems pretty neat.
Yeah.
Is there information on your website, or are there videos that kind of show this process? It sounds like something everybody would be fascinated to watch.
Sure. So we have the patents posted on our website. So if you're interested in reading the patents, then you can do that. If not, I am happy to share some videos. So reach out to me. Please spam them my email address. I'm happy to send out anything that anyone wants to see. So
that's cool. And we've talked about, you went through a program that we're big fans of.
yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So one of our earliest investors, he was like, I will give you money if you go through the NSF, National Science Foundation I-Core program. And we did. And it was the best thing that we could have done as an early stage company, especially in the healthcare space. It gave us traction and gave us an excuse to really sit down and do that needed market research for a product. I'm a business mind, so I'm always thinking about how consumers will use this, how they're going to interact with it. Is it going to be readily adoptable by the market? But going through this NSF I-Core program, it really forced me to get out of the comfort zone of telling people up front when I speak with them, hey, here's this cool product we have, would you use it? To switching gears a little bit, because the whole thing is to try to find unbiased market research and unbiased problems. So instead of opening up with, hello, my name is Chelsea Larson, I'm commercializing this technology for advanced wound care, and here's your spiel, I would open up with, please tell me about your experience with the industry.
Mm.
What is your problem? Like if you could quantify, your top 3 issues that you have when dealing with patients with wounds or just dealing with chronic wounds in general, what are they? And we were able to compile so much good data that way. We were able to talk to providers, both nurses, clinicians, doctors, surgeons across the gamut of the wound care space, surgical site infections, burn wounds, diabetic foot ulcers, outpatient, inpatient, you name it. And that was essential for not only being able to gather this data, but also to validate our business model, that we are definitely going in the right direction, targeting the outpatient sector of wound care because of the numbers and the data that we gathered in that industry. So
I
it
want to
was
hit on those
awesome.
numbers in just a second.
Sure.
But you went through this program and you've been building this company at a particularly interesting time in history where
Yes.
lockdowns happen, pandemic. And so talk a little bit about your experience navigating through, having been forced to be a virtual company during that period.
Yeah, it actually worked out to our advantage because we're in the healthcare sector. If we typically with NSFI Core, they give you a grant, it's $50,000, and they say, okay, we want you to actually go and talk to people and meet with them face to face. But obviously with COVID, that wasn't possible. We weren't even allowed to do our NSF cohort face to face. It was a giant Zoom platform. We were put into breakout rooms, the whole shebang. But because of that, I was able to talk to so many more people than I think I would have been able to otherwise. Because had I had to go and see people, I wouldn't have been able to talk to someone in Boston and then someone on the West Coast in the same day.
Yep.
And so I really capitalized on that in terms of I stacked my calendar with appointments from all across the United States, and really started to develop those relationships. And also it was so much easier for a clinician to just jump on a Zoom call or a phone call with me on their phone rather than making an appointment for me to get in and sit in front of them in their office. And so while I definitely understand the importance of meeting people face to face, I definitely think that doing the virtual NSFI Core program worked to our advantage because we are in the healthcare sector.
I love it. Love how you turned that to your advantage. And then you mentioned a minute ago, kind of the economics. Talk a little bit about the space, the wound care space. Give some people,
Sure.
Some sense of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we say chronic wounds, just a little brief overview on wound care. Chronic wounds are non-healing wounds. So these are wounds that patients have for weeks, years. And then people can also develop chronic wounds, which is they will have reoccurring chronic wounds. And actually 8.2 million Medicare beneficiaries, just Medicare beneficiaries, suffer from a chronic wound. And it's estimated in current research published in 2020 by Dr. Chandan Sen that it can be a $96.8 billion burden on Medicare. This is a huge problem. And diabetic foot ulcers are one of the most expensive wounds to treat.
Okay.
So a little bit about why infection is important and why wound care specifically is important is that the mortality rate for diabetic foot ulcers over the span of 5 years is 30.5%. So 34.5% of those with diabetic foot ulcers will die within 5 years.
Wow.
That's not even including amputation. It's literally just having the ulcer itself. And then if you're looking at a 5-year pool of those with cancer over the course of 5 years, all types of cancer, that mortality rate is 31%. So diabetic foot ulcers, 30.5%, cancer, 31%. And research is still not being able to be done in the wound care space with this incidence of mortality. And there's even further research that says that the direct cost for diabetes in 2015 was $237 billion. And the direct cost for cancer care and patients in 2015 was actually 80 billion. And so while I absolutely understand that cancer is obviously something we need to be pumping money into, I am also astounded at the little progress that has been made in the wounds care sector based on these numbers and
Well,
based
why
on
is
the
that, do you
amount of
think?
people.
Like,
So
what's limiting that?
sure, it's hard to say, but I think a lot of it is just that wound care is not as, quote unquote, sexy.
Right.
A lot of people say that wound care is not as a big money hitter as cancer or other types of research.
Mhm.
Wound care is tough. It's stinky. And a wound care doctor has the stomach, an iron stomach. I mean, it is
Mm,
what it is. These people are just so tough,
mm,
and dealing with patients who are just suffering all the time. They get depression, they have multiple comorbidities, and then a lot of the time they're non-compliant too, especially in an outpatient setting. That was actually the number one complaint that when I asked, providers, what's your number one problem in wounds care? It's non-compliant patients, meaning
sure.
they're instructed to do a certain thing to heal this wound and they don't do it. And so I think that there's also some regulatory issues as well, which we don't have to go into because that's a whole nother
Yeah.
it's a whole nother conversation that could
Well,
last several hours. But
let's hit on the ParaNano's solution to this. Let's talk a little
sure,
bit about what you guys are
absolutely.
doing to address it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the NSFI core research, we discovered a giant gap in the industry of wound care. And that is, in an outpatient setting, there is no way to continuously monitor wounds for rising infection.
Hmm.
So those mortality rates that we discussed, and that burden of how much it costs to treat wounds, is directly impacted in multiple ways by infection. So infection is going to lead to being on broad range antibiotics. It's going to lead to hospitalization. It's going to lead to amputation, sepsis, death. um, Infection is the number one issue in wounds care and
Hmm.
infection prevention. So our product is able to go directly on top of a wound. It is a biosensor, a nanofiber membrane biosensor. We are designing it to go directly on top of a wound applied in clinic by a clinician in an outpatient setting. And so the clinician will tell the patient and caregiver, hey, I need you to change these outer layer dressings, 3 times a week or every day, whatever the wound calls for. And during that time, the absorbent layers that can be used with our biosensor will be changed. The biosensor remains in place, and the clinician is going to look at that, or not the clinician, the patient and the care provider can look at our biosensor, and if it's turned green, your wound's infected and you need to go back into the clinic
Okay.
or have some type of intervention, a phone call, telemedicine, anything. And so it's really, we are providing a solution for that giant gap of the no way to continuously monitor the wound by providing a simple to use, easily accessible and readable in any type of care setting by any type of caregiver solution by saying, if it's green, you got to go do something. And so this is going to be very impactful in terms of it's going to really change the game. We have a lot of physicians who have said, when can we get your product?
Nice.
So yeah,
So
really excited.
give us a sense of where the company is today. Where are
Sure.
you in the development of the product? What's the company focused on? And then let's go just out a little bit further and talk about the balance of the year. What are your key initiatives and goals?
Absolutely. So right now we are preclinical. We are finishing up our final design prototype and we've proven feasibility. We're using the rest of our pre-seed funding for that final design prototype. We recently opened our seed funding round. We're looking for $1.5 million, and then that will last for about 18 months. And with that, we are going to start doing our FDA pathway. So we need to have a preliminary pre-submission meeting with the FDA because we're going to go a de novo route. There's no predicate device for ParaNano's product, the biosensor. So we're going to go that de novo route as a class 2 medical device. And in order to kick that off, we need to have that pre-submission meeting. We're also within that funding going to do biocompatibility testing, packaging and sterilization testing, and also further development on the manufacturing side of things, getting our machine into the clean room, making sure that there is is a manufacturing process ready to go. And then we will go after a Series A, which will finish up that FDA trials after the 18 months, get us an FDA submission successfully, probably with some type of clinical trial. And then after that round, we're going to get into the market entry in a Series B. So
let's talk as we get a little bit further out there then. As you progress, what do you anticipate an exit for a company like this? What's the goal of the management team and subsequently for its investors, and what do you need to do to get there?
Sure, absolutely. So like any good entrepreneur, we are looking for that exit. We have found that when companies, startup companies reach revenue, that's a prime time to make an exit. So giant players in the industry, 3M, Johnson & Johnson, AMT, all of these companies have made acquisitions in the wound care space recently, and large ones at that. And so we found that there are many comps, so 4 times sales or 11 times EBITDA, but that's our goal, is to get to revenue with this product. And then we would love to have a liquidity event so we can start developing other great technologies and, get our investors those investments back.
I love it. So you mentioned capital, you're raising 1.5, and we'll put information for prospective investors to get access and be able to reach out to you. Are there any other things that, as you look at the landscape over the next 6-12 months, that you need, that somebody listening may be able to help with? What other than money, if anything?
Sure. Well, I'm always looking for physicians who are willing to be advocates. And also, I'm still conducting market research. I love chatting with people who have wound care experience or experience in the industry on the regulatory side of things, going a de novo pathway, or, dealing with CMS, the other big whale of developing a medical device. And so really, I would love if anyone feels like they have something to offer a startup company, I would love to chat with them just to pick their brain about experience. But in terms of partnerships, doctors who are willing to back us and kind of follow us along, anyone who's willing to provide information on where we can also find money and or partnership opportunities for distribution, Salesforce, any of that. Well, we love chatting with people and we love learning more about the industry. So,
okay, good. Well, Chelsea, we're excited about this company. We're excited about your leadership and want to stay connected and support your efforts. So anything we can do, we would love to help. And as you have milestones and things, don't hesitate to share so we can share it with the community. But we are in your camp. So thanks for jumping on the show today, and we'll look forward to great things to come. Is there anything you want to hit before we close out? Anything that we missed?
I don't think so. I'm so excited to be a part of this community. The wound care community is very small. And like I said, I've learned a lot and kind of begun indoctrinating myself. I recently went to the SAWC Wound Healing Society conference in April, and I'm just so excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to all the connections that I'm going to make because of this, and I'm just looking forward to the future. So here's to ParaNano wound care, developing the next best thing.
I love it, and appreciate that. And in your time, maybe we'll have you on another show. We'll talk a little bit more about NSF and NIH.
Oh, I would love
and
that.
Some of the things there. It's such a great program. And as I've told you before, we see with the entrepreneurs that come through that program, there's a distinct difference. I mean, even just as you articulate that customer market fit and constantly doing research and getting that feedback loop, so important. And so few companies actually pursue that aggressively. So hats off to you. And but again, thanks. And we're excited. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay. Thanks so much, Tobin.
See you again soon for the next episode of Innovation for Alpha. Make sure to go to Innovation for Alpha for access to prior episode links, show notes, and other valuable resources. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any investment decisions, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by Angel Indie Media, and written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.